I think it is almost impossible to say anything complicated or true on television. Nonetheless, I feel one has to try to do it, because if you don't do it, or someone like you, then someone even worse will do it instead.
The fact is that when it comes to the most important kind of diversity, which is ideological diversity, there's almost none anywhere in the mainstream media, it seems to me, where you have shouting matches on TV in which the left is represented by someone like Geraldine Ferraro or Bob Beckel or Michael Kinsley. You know, the joke that Fair has made so famous, I'm not a leftist, but I play one on TV. There really is no left. This has to do with Katha's point about labor reporting, and you don't have to go as far afield as Liverpool. Look at the way they've covered is the apt word, I'm afraid, the newspaper strike in Detroit. The fact is that there is no real ideological diversity in the mainstream media. A few liberals are allowed to sound off from time to time. I just want to quote Dr. Goebbels for a moment, because he's always good for a little insight into the way things have gone. I know that sounds inflammatory.
No, not particularly.
Not particularly. Well, you're the authority on that. I recommend, well, there's a biography of Dr. Goebbels that came out a couple of years ago. He says about the purpose of Nazi propaganda.
Banned biography.
Not David Irving's. We can argue about that some other time. This is a good biography. He says at one point that one of the purposes of Nazi propaganda is to present an ostensible diversity behind which lies an actual uniformity. Okay? Now, that's not unlike what we have now. I mean, one of the standard comebacks people will lay on you when you offer media critique is, well, you know, look at all the magazines on the newsstand, look at all the cable channels you have. There is a kind of dazzling multiplicity of seemingly different offerings, you know, and yet when it comes to true ideological diversity and real debate, in fact, there's really nothing on. And I would say, as far as the right wing is concerned, because Bill, you mentioned the fact that the majority of radio hosts are consider themselves conservative, so to speak. I would say that this is echoing something Christopher said a moment ago, that much of that right-wing sentiment is in fact crypto-populist sentiment. When it comes to the media, the vast majority of the American people are distrustful, highly skeptical, to the point of paranoia. It's true. They do talk about the black helicopters. That's true. But what do you expect people to think? When the government and the mainstream media are constantly lying, most people will tend to believe any kind of lunatic theory that comes along that can be used handily to explain what's happening.
Did you say the mainstream media are lying?
I would say that the mainstream media constantly carry official lies, yes. It's a kind of echo chamber. Well, I mean, look at the Gulf War. I used that as one example. It wasn't peculiar to the era of Vietnam. It does happen all the time. The media is used as a kind of an official echo chamber, you know. But I would just conclude by saying this, because this is the Media and Democracy Congress, and most of the people in here are progressives. You know, the left has really dropped the ball so far when it comes to connecting with the mainstream on vis-a-vis the media. Only the right wing has exploited this widespread distrust and fear and economic insecurity, and you know what the main theory of media ownership is on the right. Go out to the internet and see what the theory is. You know the theory, speaking of Dr. Goebbels, it's that the media is a Jewish conspiracy. Well, they should be told that it's a capitalist conspiracy, and it's not a conspiracy. It's business as usual.
Farai?
Well, I'm going to just skip the question thing and go on to potential solutions, which is what I've been saying all night. First of all, for people who work in the mainstream media, as I do, and, you know, of course, I also do work, I mean, I have my own website. I work on all levels, but my main job is in the mainstream media. People in the mainstream media need to pitch and keep pitching. I will try to pitch a sweatshop story. I next week am doing a clean elections, clean finance story. If you ask, sometimes you receive. And so I think it's incumbent upon us in the mainstream media to actually not be afraid to ask to do stories that we think might be unpopular. For people in the alternative media, look around you. Look to the left, look to the right. How many people of color, how many gays and lesbians? I mean, we need our own housekeeping as well as, critiquing the mainstream media. Third, work small as well as large. And by that I mean people say, oh, if I just write one letter, it won't matter. Well, that's why every week the letters column is filled with absolutely insipid, asinine things. So don't be afraid to do small actions as well as large ones. And the last one is recruit new news critics. And what I mean by that is that there is this generational drop-off in news reading and news viewing. And if we do not build the next generation of news readers and viewers and critics, there will be no one left to care what gets printed and what gets on TV. So try, whether it's someone who's 50 years old or better yet, someone who's 10, to say, well, you don't read the paper. Yeah, maybe sometimes it sucks, but don't you think you should know what's going on? And maybe you could write a letter about it. Or maybe you could join with me and do something more important. So those are my 4 points.
Thank you.
Well, as the designated elitist, I guess I think that everyone has a lot in them that never comes out, and they can be appealed to at the level of Diana, our people's princess, or they can be appealed to at the level of why is it that if you wear a union button to work, you can lose your job? And those are questions that the same person might be interested in. And one, I think the latter, has a lot more to do with their real life than the other. And I think that it's not elitist to say that journalists and the news media should use their brains, talents, and resources to give people actual information about their real lives instead of creating an ever more vacuous fantasy world in which they can live for a while. So I guess I think that it's not elitist to say all that, and that the mass media, I think Christopher's point was very good, that there is this kind of weird dance of populist elitism going on, where that if you want to say, let's look at something a little closer, let's cover this story in a different way, let's resist something a little bit, then you get to be the odd man out, the person who went to college, the person who thinks she or he is better than everybody else. But in fact, everyone in the media went to college. It's a joke that anybody is truly connected with the conceived reader who weeps for Princess Di, although there are people in our social class who did that too. So I guess I would just like to close by saying I think it's really important not to indulge in a certain kind of stupefying populism, which is not the same as saying you should be elitist. I think you have to be honest about your own politics and your own intellectual ideas and your own perspective, and that's about as much as anybody could demand of another person.
Well,